Welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. I'm JD Wilson, and I am your host. And today on the show, we have Cultivate Connection Facilitator David Davault and Executive Director of Empowered to Connect, Mo Oninger, joining us for our last in our Dads Talk About series of episodes this December. We're going to talk about parenting wins. One of the things that, at least just speaking for me, and I know for Mo as well, was a difficult adjustment when we began this road of trying to do connected parenting and parent with attachment in mind, was adjusting expectations and what I thought was a win, what Mo thought was a win. You'll hear about David as well. And so we wanted to talk about reframing those expectations, and then practically, what do we need to do to consider ourselves successful as parents? I know that stereotypically with men and dads in particular, there's a lot more objective focused parenting. What are the marks we need to hit? What are the things we need to do? What can we actually get accomplished? What's a win? What's a loss? What's a success? What's a failure? And so we wanted to talk through some of the specifics of that, because it can be difficult to just say, we're going to now parent through relationship and with the connection and attachment in mind. And here's these principles we're using, without having kind of some markers to hit. And so we want to talk about some of those things today. David and his wife have been in the world of foster care for years and years and years. His wife is a social worker, so that's been a world of within group homes and in parenting biological kids as well. There was just a wealth of resources that David shared with us on this episode today. And so excited for you to hear from both David and Mo as they talked about early on reestablishing what a win was for them, and then the ins and outs, practicalities of how to begin kind of quantifying and looking into how we can have wins as parents. Really helpful, practical episode. If you are listening to this as it airs and it is in December of 2023, you might be in the midst of a holiday season and you might need some extra encouragement for how can I make sure that today we're making some progress, or how can I win as a parent today? What are some things I need to do? So today, if that's you, if that's where you're at, today is a great episode for you to dive into. So without any further ado, here he is now, David Davault and Mo Oninger and myself talking about parenting wins. So we're here today with David Davault and with Mo Oninger, and David is one of our Cultivate Connection facilitators, teaching our ETC parenting course, Cultivate Connection, out in the field in the City of Roses, as we learned just before we recorded today. And so, David, if you will, first of all, thank you for being here and joining us. And for folks who don't know you, before we jump in, will you just kind of share a little about your story, your family, and then how you guys got connected to ETC?
Sure. So I've been married to my wife Tiffany for almost 32 years now, and we kind of came into foster care early on. I was actually working for a church and decided as a youth pastor years ago, before my kids were ever born, and we decided to take our youth group to a children's home that was near the church where we lived, about an hour away, to visit. And when we were there, my wife and I were like, oh my goodness, like we didn't even know this need existed, but wow, there's so many kids out there that don't have parents, that are in care for one reason or another. Like, what do we do about this? And our heart's cry was like, we want to be part of the solution for this. So we just jumped in. We're like, hey, how do we get to be foster parents? And pretty soon we ended up getting matched up. We did all the paperwork, did all the work to be licensed as a foster home, and then we're matched up with a little 3-year-old girl. And this was before we had kids of our own. We got married when we were 19 years old, so we were probably 22, 23 at the time. And a little 3-year-old girl was our first child that was in foster care with us for a while. And from that point on, it's just been, we've been involved in foster care, in advocacy for kids who are in rough places for decades now.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of different things, but now we're we're in a space now actually living with my dad and her mom and giving them care. And so we're not actively parenting kids. We have had kids that have many kids through our home. We worked at a children's home for a while. But at this point, my wife is a social worker.
Right.
That's her heart and that's her degree. She's has a master's in social work. And she works for an organization called the Fostering Collective here in Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
And she was looking for more resources to be able to help people with parenting kids. And she came across Empowered to Connect, Cultivate Connection, and it's like, hey, do you want to do this with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So I jumped in,
That's awesome. Before we jump into kind of our conversation,
Isn't that the truth for all of us? Like it's always the wife dragging us. Come on.
right.
Well, what's funny, it was me dragging us into foster care in the first place, but she's definitely the expert in it. And I'm always the one that's just the heartstrings, just like, oh, yeah, it's been a good dynamic for the two of us.
So for you guys, you jump into the world of learning about connected parenting and attachment and all of that through ETC. What was that experience like for you when you first started into that?
Because we've been in this arena for a long time, I wasn't sure I was going to learn anything new. Like, okay, yeah, I've kind of been there, done that. And going through the course, going through the facilitator course, there was so much that I was just like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, whoa, I didn't think of that before. I think one of the biggest things that I came away with is like, whoa, wait, there's 8 different play personalities. What? Like, I thought we all played the same way, and I've been, been a parent. I've got kids who are in their 20s, foster kids who've been through our home that are now, in their 40s. And I'm like, wow, what is this play thing? What do you mean there's different types of play? So yeah, definitely learned a lot through the course, and just I love the compassion and the care, the focus on even self-care that this course has. That really that I've learned kind of the hard way through the years. So it's great to see that people are out there teaching it maybe a little bit easier method.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. We're talking today about parenting wins, and so we wanted to talk about that specifically on an episode with dads because I would say this is a tough thing to define sometimes, and especially for dads stereotypically, the expectations, the idea of like what is success, what's a win, are all over the map. And so maybe one of my first questions to you, David, would just be, how is there a difference between how you used to define a win parenting versus how you would define one now?
Yeah, definitely. I think that has progressed for me through the years. A win back in the day was getting my kid to do the thing that I thought they needed to do. Right. Yeah. If I can get you to do the right thing, then you're going to be the right kind of kid. If I can get you to do what I expect of you, honestly, then that's a win. And kids aren't wired like that, are they?
Not mine. Oh man, Mo, what about for you? I mean, you guys have when you tell your story, you always talk about kind of a pre-ETC time and then a post-ETC time. How did those wins change for you when you guys started to once you got going with ETC?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot like David. I just you just thought your family was gonna look a certain way, behave a certain way, fall into line and do all the things, and that this playbook would run out and they would just, in many ways, and it was never spoken, but I just thought they would have the same interest as me, the same hobbies as me. They would want to do the same things as me, and the beautiful part of parenting, and for, Ton and I with 6 kids, is the uniqueness of each child and understanding each kid. And a win at the end of the day is to be in relationship and connection with your child. And that can look so different. And each relationship with each child is so different. And so, you know, a win for one child is just different. And so I think being a student of each child,
Sure.
it just, adds that layer of it and so much of winning when we think of as parents is so performative. Like, is my child performing the way they're supposed to? Are they excelling at school? Are they excelling at sports? Are they going to college? Are they getting it's all the stuff. And really, it's like being able to connect to the heart of my kids, for them to be emotionally processing and growing, and me as well, and us to be in connection in relationship is just a good thing, is a win.
David, you guys had, as you talked about, I mean, lots of kids come through your house, different personalities, different backgrounds, paths, different ways of connecting with you guys, right? So when you think about kind of over time, the skills that you've acquired as a parent, do you feel like there are some things that stood out that became a roadmap for you, that when a kid came into your house, that they would help you to get to know them and figure out how to connect with them better?
The word that comes to mind is curiosity. To stay curious and not to think that I do have it all figured out. When kids first started coming into our home, especially like 10 years ago, we opened our home again and had, a lot of teenage kids come through our home for a while. And as they come in, I would have absolute expectations of like, man, I'm going to be their buddy and they're just going to think I'm the coolest and whatever. And they'd come in and they wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. They're like, based on maybe some of their trauma, they absolutely wouldn't want anything to do with not just me, but any male, Yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, how's this going to work? Wait, I'm opening my home to you. Like, why aren't you responding to me with gratitude? And so learning to just be like curious about that rather than like critical or like disappointed, but to be able to just walk with them for a minute and be like, hey, tell me about where you came from. Tell me about your story. And I mean, these kids come from some hard stories a lot of times. And honestly, like on a scale of 0 to 100, if I could get a child to engage with me from, move from a 0 to a 3 in the time that I had them, it was still progress, right? But being able to come to that recognition that I would say one of my biggest things is like expecting them to adapt to my way of doing things. This is just the way I am. Like you just need, hey, I'm just David. I'm just being me. Like I don't care if like my anxiety, my anxiousness, my energy like freaks you out. Like you just need to get used to it, and instead be like, wait a minute, what does this person need to be able to relate to me? How do I need to enter the room in such a way that they can feel safe and seen and like, not freaked out every time I walk in.
Without oversharing, David, are there moments that you can think of where you learned those lessons kind of, I don't want to use the expression the hard way, but like moments where you can remember, man, this was one time I really learned that particular principle?
Sure. I even think of, I had one young lady that I picked up from school every day for almost 2 years. And, when she'd get in the car, my experience was, you get in the car and we get to do 20 questions. How was your day? What was good about it? What did and she'd get in the car and she'd put her headphones in. And I'm like, okay, I feel so rejected right now. I had to get over myself in a sense to be able to say, maybe she just needs some time to not. So then every once in a while, she might actually take her headphones out and ask me a question or, tell me something about her day. And that was a huge win, just to have any little bit of connection with her. Because she honestly, up to that point in her life, she'd never been in a home with a man, period. So can you imagine like how crazy that is to just be in a car with me, So of course we put our headphones in. Like I'm just trying to control my own environment here, and for me to recognize that and be curious about that rather than like critical because she can't deal with me, that was a big deal.
Man, I love like all that you said, because it's, I think so often we have expectations of our kids, and we just kind of expect them to adapt to our world, adapt to us. And man, there's been, like you said, man, I don't know if you're a Ted Lasso fan, but he says, be curious, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, be curious. Ted Lasso. I love that you're
the
saying
dart scene.
yeah, totally. The dart scene. Be curious. And that is such a humble way of approaching our kiddos, and to be curious about their behavior, be curious about them. It's really a sweet spot to be in with our kiddos, is that place of being curious, because our kids, they're growing and developing, and there's different seasons, and man, it's different, for us navigating 11-year-old and a 19-year-old, and just curious about the season, and curious about them, and what we bring to the relationship. And I love that, David.
Yeah. And also in that season, curious about the season part, like I could think of, not expecting them, well, just to talk with them, just to have opportunities to talk with our kids in a time when they want to. Our son, all throughout his life, wouldn't say 5 words during the day. But come about 9-10 o'clock, when mom and dad are ready to absolutely wind down and go crash, he'd come sit in our room and want to talk. And we could either say, no, we're tired, son, please go away, essentially, or listen and be curious, remember to be curious. And, I didn't always get it right. Sometimes I was just too tired. I'm like, I'm glad you want to talk, but I got nothing to give, But more and more, especially as we got older, I mean, it was such a joy. And everybody says the teenage years are so terrible, But for us, like just finding those places to connect whenever they are. And if it is at 11 o'clock at night, if that's when he finally comes to me and says, hey, Dad, I want to tell you about my day, I'll be like, yes, please.
Right.
Just to welcome that in whenever it happens. Such a big deal for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And Mo,
and he gave me permission to say anything about that I wanted to.
No.
Mo, I know you guys were late night connectors too, with some of your kids. And so I think, one of the things that I love hearing that you're saying, I mean, yes, like the humility and that Mo mentioned, the flexibility, like just understanding, like, man, we're gonna have to kind of, bob and weave a little bit and find our spots to connect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've got one kiddo that is up every morning before the sun comes up, and but that's me too. So like, the mornings are my place to be curious, and just his temperament is engaging with him, asking questions is a win. He will answer and talk and ask questions, and that's how you connect with his heart. Now, I've got kiddos that hate the morning, like if they could sleep till noon, they would. And so I engage them and getting to know them, and like I don't think I'm as playful as I used to be. I think I'm just tired now. But like, I used to just kind of be this playful guy, and realize some of my kiddos, that's not going to connect with them in the mornings. Like I've got to know what it is for them. And that could be, I'm just quiet. I'm going to connect with them by having their breakfast ready and quietly getting their backpack ready and getting them out the door. But yeah, come 11 o'clock at night, they're coming up and jumping on the bed and wanting to talk. And so again, it's being curious, it's being open, it's being flexible. I mean, it's all the things David said. It's just, at the end of the day, connection is the goal. And if connecting to our kids is the goal, then as dads, how do we come home to be open to that? How are we not distracted by work? How are we not distracted by all that's coming at us so that we can be available, whatever that needs to look like? And for my kid that wants to shoot basketball, I can shoot basketball. For my kid that wants to go on a drive, I can go on a drive. For the kid that just wants to sit down and watch a show, I can do that. So, I mean, it's just, I think when I think back on entering, like, what were my expectations parenting, I just thought my kids would be like I was when I was little, and I would just do those things. And none of my kids like the things that I like. And so it's just, but it's been a gift. It really has been a gift. And I'm not saying it's been easy. It's not easy, but like the gift of becoming a student of my children in order that I can connect with them is a gift.
Well, and something that, I mean, both of you guys have touched on this, but something that was hard for me to learn, and Mo, it goes back to what you were just saying about thinking that your kids were going to want to just be many versions of you. If I like unpack that a little further, I just think, I'll have somebody to play with. Like, I'll have somebody to play with, but I'll always be better than the thing we're playing with. Right? So it sounded very exciting for me, that thought. And even I do have one in particular who loves to do a lot of what I wanted to do growing up, but he wants to do it in a different way. And so whereas I feel like I have a lot to teach and a lot to, want to offer the other day, this kid said, would you just play and stop trying to like coach me and everything? I was like, oh yeah. Yeah. And it was an epiphany for me. Sometimes just playing with them, I was letting those same expectations of like, well, I want them to be the best they can be. I want them to be able to grow and learn stuff I didn't learn and have advantages I didn't get to have, whatever. And all of that was because I wanted them to be able to, be better than I was at X, Y, or Z thing, which I would have been mortified to say outright, right? Like I wouldn't have believed that if I'd said it outright. And so learning just to be able to play for one of our kids, it's riding in the car, listening to music, just blasting music and giving him control of the music and letting him listen to whatever. And us sharing that together has been really special.
What a great moment of vulnerability for that child, though, and that you provided the safety, for him to be able to say, "Hey, Dad, you're not playing the way I need you to play," and you didn't come back at him in some kind of negative form. Like, that's awesome too. So that's a dad win right there, I got to say.
Well, I do appreciate that. But
JD also introduced them to they're now all Auburn fans. So that that would be a parenting fail.
Yeah. Oh, no. If you're listening to this, I just have to share this. If you're listening to this, when we air it, it is in December of 2023, and Auburn and the University of Alabama play football every year in what is, a lot of people say, the most intense rivalry in sports. And it's, very crazy. My wife and I both went to Auburn. We are both huge Auburn fans. And so we have, indoctrinated our kids that same way. And the game that they just lost, they lost in completely demoralizing, heartbreaking fashion at basically the last play of the game. And it was an extremely improbable, should not have happened play. And right before it started, one of my kids said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're going to win. Look how far away they are. There's no way they'll get this." And we both almost in unison said, "Guys, this is what they do to us. This is what Auburn does to us, is that they suck us in and make us believe, only to just crash our hopes again." And as we are giving them the disclaimer of what it means to be an Auburn fan, sure enough, touchdown, Alabama, they win.
Roll Tide.
Our kids were so surprised and dejected. And Elizabeth and I just sat there staring at the screen like, why do we do this to ourselves? So that is a parenting fail. We should have steered them.
There was connection in that pain. There was connection.
Well, that's true.
There we go. Let's try to put a spin on it.
Oh my gosh. Maybe don't teach your kids about sports and they won't get hurt by them. That would be another good one. So David, I would love for us to kind of, as we shift into thinking through some more practicalities, you guys work with a lot of families. You mentioned your wife being a social worker and just you guys kind of being in that community and now teaching Cultivate Connection as well. How do you think through when you're coaching, kind of teaching, talking to other parents, specifically dads, about how to set expectations? Are there ways that you are trying to set them up, or is it kind of what we've been talking about already so far? Are there more tips and tricks you give?
even in that, I think it needs to be relational. First of all, when I'm talking with a dad, I'm not going to come at him. I'm going to come alongside him, and just try to encourage wherever he is at. Maybe, hey, have you thought about this? Have you considered it this way? I'm not going to tell him, hey, you're doing it wrong, because that's never going to go well. But yeah, just to come alongside and also be curious about his story and his journey and how he got there. So yeah, that's for me. It's just part of coming alongside and seeing where they are and going from there.
Yeah.
We lost Mo.
We did lose Mo. I'm sure just temporarily. Our internet has been on the fritz at the office a little bit, so we'll have to see if it, if it comes back.
I was out entirely earlier today. I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna be able to record.
Oh gosh. So, one of the things that for me, I noticed is we went through the Empower to Connect parenting classes before it was Cultivate Connection, maybe 10, 11 years ago. And shortly after going through the courses, I had forgotten basically everything I had learned. Right. So I went through the course and I'm then, shortly after that, right back into the same patterns of, just yelling and being, and just being too strung up on the way that I thought things needed to be. And it took a while for me to, learn some of these lessons, particularly in the curiosity and flexibility departments. And, for you, when you were first starting out, I'm thinking about other parents who are starting out on this journey who might be discouraged. The holidays can be a time where that discouragement is just pushed into the forefront. What encouragement would you have for other parents that are just starting out in this journey, but might not be feeling super confident in how they're parenting yet?
That I think is where a lot of self-care comes in. I mean, just be kind to yourself, first of all. Like this, I love to use the word practice. Like, hey, I'm just practicing some things. Practice is such to me, a gentle word. Like there's a lot of forgiveness. There's a lot of grace in that word. Like, I'm just going to keep practicing this and see how it goes. And you know what? If it works, like if people say it works, then eventually it's going to work for me too, yeah, so I like to use that word a lot. Like, hey, this isn't something you have to get right the first time. This isn't something you're going to get right every time. But let's just keep practicing it and, be kind to yourself as you're doing it. Be curious with yourself. Like, how could I have done that differently? How did I really show up for my kid this time? How did I show up for myself this time?
Yeah.
Just stay in it, but keep practicing.
Yeah. Specifically, I think and it might be the same advice, you can tell me, but you guys have walked the road of foster parenting for years and years. Would you tailor that advice specifically to those foster parents who are receiving kids kind of during the holiday season? And are there any encouragements you can give them as they're bringing new kids in during this time?
And I'd say, first of all, like just think about where they're coming from. These kids have no doubt been through a lot. They're not there. No child is in your home as a child in foster care because of their choice. You're right. They're in your home because of other people's choices that were really against them in some form. So realizing that and giving a lot of space for that, allowing grief to exist and even grieve with them, be with them in those times. Who wants to be at some stranger's house at Christmas? You want to be home with mom and dad or grandma or whoever. Like, you don't want to be, situation. So just again, I think curiosity is a big thing, and then a lot of compassion. But it's going to take kind of stepping back out of your own feelings and going, okay, this is not about me. I'm not doing this for me. Honestly, I think some people do, but I think for the most part, people are trying to provide a safe place for kids and to do it in a structured way, but also with a lot of nurture. Right? We got to have high structure and high nurture for this to really work.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I have more questions about that. We'll have to save that. We'll do a separate episode talking more about that specific deal. Any last words before we kind of sign off today, like things that you'd want to say to parents or any encouragement for them at all?
Yeah, I just think, again, keep practicing, keep your curiosity at the forefront of what you're doing. And, just remember these kids are wherever they came from, whether they're a biological child, whether they're a foster child, whether you've adopted them, like they're going through a lot. Being a kid is a hard thing, and being able to come alongside them with curiosity, I think is such a key in being able to parent them well. Mm-hmm. And stay curious about your own story as you're doing it as well, because your story is also evolving as you go.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. No, that is a difficult part. Well, man, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, a big thanks to David for joining us. Mo had his internet cut out in the middle of our episode. And so you got to hear him for the first part. And then David and I got to carry you home to the finish there. But, just a big thank you to him and what incredible wisdom, curiosity, flexibility, vulnerability, just a great markers for us to kind of set as ideals, especially as dads, for ways that we are, accomplishing, wins as a parent. Are we more connected today than we were when we started? At the end of the day, are we looking up and relationship has grown, or relationship has been broken and then repaired? Are we on the way to repair? Has there been progress in our connection with our kids? And so just a wealth of resources today in the conversation. So that's all we've got for today. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube, most on video, all on audio, or you can find all of our audio podcasts on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. And that's our Tuesday podcast, the Empowered to Connect podcast, as well as our Friday show, Carpool Q&A. All of those can be found at those places. And so if you need links, you can find them in the show notes below. But for everybody here at Empowered to Connect, for Mo Ottinger and David Davault, for Tana, for Becca, for our whole entire team, for Kyle Wright, who edits and engineers all of our audio, for Tad Jewett, the creator of the music behind the Empowered to Connect podcast, I'm JD Wilson. And we see you next week on the Empowered to Connect podcast.